All right, all right, all right. Welcome to another episode of Pizza Punk. My name is the Hungry Pizza End, and with me is my esteemed guest, Pete Damien Marshall. This guy's got some freaking resume. He has done it all. He has done it all. Um, Pete has played with some incredible bands. He is a musician first and foremost. He also knows his way around gear and cabinets and guitars and basses. And I'm sure there's a laundry list of things that Pete would correct me on right now and tell me that he knows a lot more, probably things that go over my non-musician head.
Fixing the dryer.
Yes. Right. Some of the bands that Pete has been involved with, he started off with Morning Noise and the Horror Lords. Played throughout the original stint of Samhain. Then from there, he's in a band that not many people are familiar with, but I love this band. Love this band. The Brain Eaters, Joe Truck's band. He played guitar in the Brain Eaters, and then the next thing, probably just blows my mind. Dude toured the world with Iggy Pop and you were in the Trolls, right, Pete?
I guess that's what they called us.
Yeah, the Trolls. He wrote with Iggy, Blood on Your Cool, amongst some other really cool songs. He's also played in the BB Buell band. He's played freaking with Cheetah Chrome. I mean, this dude has done it all. And so welcome.
Don't forget the ultra short stint with Manitoba.
Right. Wait, what? I didn't know that. Really?
Yeah.
When? What was that?
2017, I think.
Oh. Now wait, this was called Manitoba, or this was Dictators NYC, or what was what?
No, it was called Manitoba Punk Soul Punk or something like that.
Oh.
He was gonna have a solo album come out. It may not have, but I was involved in that for a couple of shows.
Wow. Yeah, he fell off the face of the earth.
Yeah.
HDM.
And
gone.
Yeah.
But I did not know that. That's another feather in the cap of Pete Damien Marshall. So welcome to the show, Pete. Let's get this question out of the way, because I want to talk all about music with you. But the show is called Pizza Punk. And so let's talk about pizza real quick. My question, the thesis question that I ask on the show to every guest that I've had is pizza punk, and why? And, again, there's no right or wrong answer. I just want to hear what you got to say.
Yes, because it was readily available. Say you were playing A7 and you got hungry, go over to Stromboli's, get a slice. Maybe Doug Holland would have you pick up a case of beer because they were running out at the bar.
Wow.
At A7.
There you go. By the way, Pete did get my email about wearing plaid because it's Sunday. I'm in my
t-shirt.
signature. I'm sorry.
FMU t-shirt too.
Yes, that was the other. I said we have a dress code here, and it's plaid, and I think that's going to be that's the other part of the on brand for Pizza Punk from now on is plaid.
Yeah.
So I was very happy to see that Pete was wearing plaid. So okay, that's great. That's great. I like that answer a lot. I agree, man. Readily available, just like in the way that you got 3 chords, a bass, drum, and a guitar, and those are readily available if you can get your hands on them, and you make pizza with those instruments, and and you get some punk rock. So pizza is punk.
Yeah.
All right, man. Let's talk about, so we did have a conversation once before. I came down to SIR.
Yeah.
With a 6-pack, and we shot the SHIT for about 2 hours, It's all on tape. It'll come out someday with They Came
Yeah.
from Lodi. But you told me so much cool stuff, and I haven't watched those tapes since we recorded them, so I'm very interested to dive back in. But it's been 9 years since we did that, and so let's just go back a ways, and we'll go through the thing. You first started play. Well, I mean, you were playing guitar before, but how did you get involved with Morning Noise, and how did you get involved with the Whorelords?
The first thing I remember about the Whorelords was my friend who I grew up with, Jim Wallerstein, who's married to B.B. Buell, had this book on New York punk, and now that I think about it, it had the picture of one of them was Howie Pyro and John Xavier. Howie burning his hair off in the entrance to the Palace Hotel next to CB's. And there was also a picture of Bobby Snots that fascinated me for some reason, because it had a skull he had a tattoo of a skull with an army helmet on it, and it said Missy underneath. And then, I've been hanging around the burgeoning hardcore scene, and I was going to, I was going to Bergen Community College, and lo and behold, Bobby Snots is in my psychology class. He had just gotten out of county jail again, and was living with his mom in Edgewater, and he's there in the. I was sitting in the cafeteria with somebody, and he came in with a leather jacket that said Whorelords on it, and I was like, I know that guy, and I don't know what was wrong with me or what. At that point, I marched right up to him and said, "Hey, you're Bobby Snots. I know you. You were in the Whorelords." And he was like, "Yeah, we're playing soon. So why don't you come? It's at Blue Moon Studios." And
was he kind of like was he impressed that you knew who he was, or he was just like, yeah, you should know who I am?
Yeah, it was kind of like Danzig light. So I went to that show, and he and the guitar player got into a fight on stage. And right there, he comes up to me after the show and said, "You're the guitar player now. Never heard me play."
Wow.
And so we took it from there, and it was just as much of a train wreck as every earlier version was, except that I got the recording.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and that's supposed to Mark Yoshitomi from Generation Records is he had it mastered, and we're nice. Trying to put it together to get it out,
because that's one of those bands.
Yeah,
Whorelords are one of those bands that just much like similarly the Stimulators and a few others.
Yeah,
the Fiends, I would think, is another one. Really, the Mad, even though they have a couple of 7-inches, these bands just don't have. They're kind of lost to time when it comes to like the record, the fossil vinyl record, at least, and there's just nothing out.
Yeah, well, especially the Whorelords, because it was always 2 junkies and 2 kids,
right?
So nobody had enough money to get the recording out of Hawk ever.
Yeah, but wow, amazing. That's why you never throw anything away. That's why you hold on to this sort of stuff, because maybe it might take a couple decades, but someday someone's going to be interested in it and want to put it out, and it needs to be there for historical file keeping.
Yeah, now, but that back then it was like, who cared?
Right, of course. Let me ask you this, because you said you started hanging out around like the dawn of hardcore.
Mm-hmm.
What from your point of view, in your opinion, as you saw it through your own eyes, what was there was like, it seemed like 1979 to 1980, there was this massive split that happened in the New York punk scene, and it sort of like diverged in a bunch of different ways. maybe even a little bit earlier than that. Maybe it started in 78 through 80, and you wound up with like hardcore, there's like new wave, and then there's still kind of like punk rock or something.
The rock and rolly band with the Johnny Thunders-esque guitar player.
Right.
You'll never get rid of that in New York. There's always some guy with the newsboy hat and the Les Paul Jr.
Yeah.
No, me. But
what do you think about that?
I would say it happened later on.
Okay.
I would say like 80, 81 when there about when there was that whole new no wave scene of like James Chance,
yeah. The
Contortions and Lydia Lunch. I did play with James Chance too at we do a since we all worked for Lou Reed at some point, we have something called the Lou Crew, and we do every year on his birthday we do a show.
When did you work for Lou Reed?
How could I not? He rehearsed it at SIR.
Right. Wow. So what the hell is that like being in a room with Lou Reed?
It's for some people it's terrifying. For me, it was just annoying. Because he felt like he had to be a jerk constantly,
like to be on brand,
in control. And I remember one rehearsal. It turned out one of the tubes in his amp that he was using, his Soldano, was going bad, and the girl rehearsal tech came in and she said, I can't deal with this guy anymore. Can you come in and help me? So I said, all right, I'm gonna go in, and he's on the phone with the owner of Soldano Amplifiers complaining about it. And I was like, yeah, I'll just take this. I'll take a look at it. I'll be right back. And he's like, you break it, you bought it. I'm like, way to go, dude. I'm trying to help you out. So anyway, it was just a bad tube. I had two others that I put in the amp and rebiased it, brought it in, and he's like, oh, took you long enough.
See, on what level, I mean, that is very dickish, but like on what level is he like, I have to do this on purpose so that people like remember that I'm Lou Reed? Or you think that's just really just a part of his demeanor?
I don't think if he knew you and he got to know me later on, he would let down his guard.
Right. It's
a guard. Be a nice guy. And, then he saw me playing with BB too. So
that helped.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, I mean, that was his usual shtick with anybody that worked there.
So to bring it back around to what we were talking about.
Yeah.
So you're saying 80, 81 is when the hardcore thing is really starting up in 80 to 81. But what is hardcore in your opinion? What is hardcore reaction to within the punk scene or vibe or whatever that's going on at the time?
I'm not sure. Because it was, you'd see, I think it was just a younger crowd came in, maybe. And I don't know, it got faster. It just evolved into something else. Whereas, I mean, but a lot of times you'd still see the same people. And, you'd be at like a matinee, and there's Ty Sticks, who played with the Heartbreakers, like bumming change outside of CB's. And, walking around with his ghetto blaster with Live at Max's playing, so everybody knew who he was.
Right, of course.
I think I told you that too. It's like I saw him on St. Mark's Place when I was in high school, and doing the same thing. And I was like, I don't ever want to be that guy.
Yeah.
That made a seared an impression on me at 16 or so. But it's I don't know when it. I would say when they started having matinees for hardcore bands.
Oh.
That was when it got diversified. Otherwise, it's like I remember going and seeing the Stimulators on Halloween, and it was like, just 4 other bands and them. Wow. And everybody still did 2 sets at CB's, and that was a great show.
What was the 2 set thing about?
I think it was selling drinks. I'm not sure, but that had to be 82, and then slightly after that, every show I remember going to there, the tables were moved out, and it was, the floor was open. But right. that was the last show I remember sitting at a table in CB's.
Wow. So when did you get involved with Morning Noise?
Once again, Burden Community College.
Nice.
I see Steve Greco was going there too, and I guess they had a falling out with their guitar player Tommy Krapowski, and Steve knew I played guitar in the Horror Lords, and at that point, I guess it came up to the point we played a show. The Horror Lords played a show, and then outside of CB's later on, Bobby Snot says, "We're not the Horror Lords anymore. We're called Nazi Youth." And all 3 of us were like, "I quit."
Yeah.
And then he did. I've heard he did one more show like that, and then eventually he got stabbed and was killed.
He was. I thought he died of an overdose. He was killed. He was stabbed.
I think he was killed outside of Continental.
Wow, I did not know that.
Yeah,
Bobby Snots. Wow. So then you played. I mean, your stint with Morning Noise was short lived. It was not very long, right?
I guess not. Yeah, it went from maybe late '82, early '83 up until I got Samhain.
So you did Morning Noise did shows with the original Misfits, right?
I don't think so.
Did you
we never
you never played, you never opened for the Misfits or nothing?
No. Rosemary's Babies, yes, but
right. Which was Erie's band.
Yeah.
So interesting how Steve had his band. He was the drummer and also kind of like, up front in the sense of like, moving and shaking
it forward. Yeah.
Right. And so was Erie as the drummer.
Yeah.
And both doing their things, and both probably both probably would have been drummers for the Misfits at one point or another had they not been so serious about their own projects.
Right.
So kind of interesting. And it makes me wonder, either one of those guys would have been perhaps you don't get any Samhain, or Samhain wouldn't come to later, or whatever would come after the Misfits wouldn't come to later if you have one of those guys in that band drumming, because they might have stabilized the lineup, meaning, or who knows, maybe that it would be Erie, for a couple months, and then Steve, and when they're getting one or the other whenever one or the other is available, and then all of a sudden there's this like stabilized, and those guys could play the Earth AD material easily. So you have like stabilized band that's touring, that Earth AD comes out, they do the Germany tour with one of those guys, maybe they keep going, who knows, in the alternate universe where we only got 2 Michael Myers movies instead of 11. I'm convinced we're living in the alternate reality where they actually made 9 or 10 Michael Myers movies, and it really, the normal Halloween was supposed to just have the first 2, and then it was supposed to be an anthology with the 3rd one on. And the reason why I bring that up is because, in my opinion, and maybe you have some insight, or this is just my personal opinion as someone who was not there, I think Glenn got the idea to call his band Samhain, or started to get obsessed with Samhain, because he saw Halloween 2, and he saw Michael Myers write Samhain in blood and was like, that's really cool. And I think that's where he got the idea from. I have nothing to prove this. I just think
maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe, but he did a lot of reading about the occult and
right.
Things like that. And I know Blood Feast was actually written not for the Misfits, but for what he was already prepping something else.
Right. But my wonder is, yes, he was reading about the occult, but my wonder is, did he see the word Samhain and be like, wow, that's actually, I got to read more about that, which is around 81, which is why this all makes sense to me in my mind. Cause I'm going, around 81. And that's also, he's doing Archangel for Dave Vanian.
Yeah.
And, which is also fascinating in and of itself, because they had a huge falling out with the Damned. And now here he is doing something for Dave Vanian, or trying to later on. That's interesting. But I personally think that's what led to, and again, you or Steve or whoever be like, no, Jeff, you don't know what you're talking about. But that's just what I surmise in my mind,
Maybe it's like but if you tried to second guess him on anything, he'd get angry and like tell you, no, you don't know what you're fucking talking about.
Well, you know what? You blew my mind in my like deep diving research and all that stuff back when I first started doing the Lodi documentary. You said something in your interview that stuck with me forever. You said it so matter-of-factly, and it's just something that never had ever, like, I never made the connection. You go, yeah, dude, he's all about Bukowski. He's like, yeah, Bukowski is, you brought up Bukowski. I'm like, what does Bukowski have to do with anything? And then, you look at the first record, he thanks Bukowski. And then you start, he says in an interview, there's always only been one guy for lyrical influence. It is Bukowski. You look at the Static Age stuff, Theme for a Jackal, all that jazz, Bukowski, all Bukowski. Blew my mind.
Yeah. Well, and when I first got in Samhain, I was out of the other, the three guys, I was basically the only one that had, read books. So, and had an interest in, literary stuff. Because, Steve and Erie didn't.
So you keyed in on that.
Yeah. I actually wanted to help him with the words. I was such an idiot.
How did he react to that?
He didn't like it.
I bet. So how did you get the gig? So how did you get the gig? What because they had Lyle from Minor Threat. Lyle played on some of Initium. I remember you telling me that you played on Initium too. What's the story with all that?
I never played on that.
Maybe I'm wrong. No overdubs or nothing?
No. Nothing like that. But I was because when they did the recording too, it's like Lyle would come up, and then after a while Glenn realized, like, I don't like this guy. And they eventually would make fun of him, and he always came off as a rich kid. Pretty much all the Minor Threat guys, well, him and Brian Baker, who I got to know later on too. But, you approach them at shows and, they were just dicks.
But here's my question. So you're in the peripheral, you're hanging around.
Right.
While Lyle is still sort of in the band.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you remember of like late 83, the Misfits breakup? What do you remember about the Misfits breaking up in particular? Do you remember hearing anything about that?
It just kind of fizzled out.
Yeah.
And then, we'd see like Jerry and Doyle driving around in their Blazers or their Corvettes or whatever they were driving at that point.
Van Halen.
With Van Halen blasting with the huge spikes on the front. And you know, it's just kind of fizzled out, and they were grumpy, and then Glenn didn't want to ever have anything to do with them again, and at that point, and that was pretty much it. And then I think they moved operations up to Vernon, and after that, I'd see, you know, you go shopping, because I lived up in Highland Lakes, which is part of Vernon, and
No, I did not know that.
You go to the, you go to the A&P late at night, and there's Jerry buying groceries in a shirt that had like zippers on it. They're like, "Hey, how you doing?" Oh, yeah.
Christ the Conqueror.
Yeah, which I dug out the other day.
Oh yeah,
I knew I had it somewhere. I found it.
Yeah, that's a trip.
Yeah, that's all I'll say about that. But
yeah,
and that, it was two different camps, I guess you'd say.
Yeah, but so there's like a lot of time though before that first Samhain show was in March.
Yeah.
Of 84. It ends in 83. So that all that time, I guess, is spent recording Initium, and you're kind of, so that would mean at some point while sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, that winter it was spent like recording at off hours at Real Platinum, like 3 hours here and there, and eventually it gets done, and then there's the first show in March, and then Lyle goes back to DC, and they never talk to each other again.
But Brian Baker was also involved at some point, but that was like kind of
earlier, yeah. And he was at that show too.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
You were at that show?
Yeah, they used the one of the, I think Lyle used my guitar amp.
Oh.
Or Glenn did.
You're waiting in the wings, dude.
Yeah. Steve was giving me tapes, and yeah, I was.
Do you remember? Question. Sorry, didn't mean to cut you off. Question. Do you remember Steve is giving you tapes? Do you remember listening to any sort of like just drums and guitar, hardcore breakdown stuff that Steve and Glenn were doing that didn't have any vocals? Like,
yeah, there was. Steve had a Tascam 4-track in his room, and a lot of the demos were done on that.
Interesting.
And there was a lot of fooling around, and Glenn playing like cowboy songs. But that was initially, that's what I heard.
Was George Germain in the picture at this point, if you even know who he is?
Yeah. He might have. I think he did some of the. He came in and really annoyed Bob Alec at Real Platinum. And then, I mean, after that, it was like, we'd go see him because he lived in the same apartment complex as Steve. And then, that was it. And I think by the time we got to Unholy Passion, he was kind of out of the picture. But I could be wrong.
What I'm trying to, I've always tried to imagine what's Glenn's temperament around a guy like George Germain, especially if Glenn is like a guy who's all like, you can't tell me what to do. I know what I'm doing, yada, yada, yada. And from what I've heard about George knew a little bit about everything and just was very knowledgeable, probably why he was annoying Bob Aleka to some point, because he had to throw his 2 cents in about how he knew about guitars and Les Paul and yada, yada, yada.
Yeah. And yeah, exactly. I showed George Benson this chord, and
So what, man, if that guy was alive, I'd love to just sit and talk, hear him talk for hours and hours.
Oh yeah.
But what's Glenn's temperament towards a guy like that? That you, from what anything you remember?
He'd glean whatever he needed to know from him, and then reverse back into making fun of him 24/7.
Gotcha.
But I think that's his way of maintaining control in the situation. Whereas it's like, he take whatever he needs, and then, you're just along for the ride. So henceforth, I can make fun of you.
Tell me about, because we'll go down this road. Tell me about Glenn Danzig's basement, the legendary basement.
It was
whatever you remember.
It's just, I think about that house now. It was a 2-family house, and it had to be the footprint 30 by 30. So I forget who lived upstairs, but the basement had, it was like sort of an efficiency apartment with a separate kitchen, which never got used. And then, Glenn's crap. And then the other half was like a basement where we, the laundry got done, and we made Teeshirts, et cetera, et cetera.
And so you go down there and it's just like Dr. Horror's Cabinet of Curiosities.
Kind of. His Japanese action figures all over everything. I remember there was he had a Wurlitzer piano. An electric piano, the A200 or whatever it is, which I now are the bane of my existence at my job. But he had that and the action figure set up on it. There's pictures. They're like in that issue of Thrasher. That's actually that area, the kitchen, facing north.
I had heard from somewhere else that he had stacks and stacks of song ideas, compositions, papers. Did you ever see anything like that? Was that part of the writing process in Samhain the way it might have been with the Misfits?
Not really, but basically he would, when we new material, would be like, okay, this is a new song, and here's the chords, here's the changes, there's 3 sections, and there was we learned it. He arranged it himself, and we didn't know what was called really, or the words, until it got fleshed out later.
Wow.
But
so he could keep all that stuff in his head.
Mm-hmm. But I did have some notes that I think right about the time I got canned, that he had what we called the Alice Cooper ripoff, which turned into Twist a Cane, I think. But I had that written. It's his handwriting. I sold all that stuff too, so it's.
Oh, I have pictures of all of it before you sold it, because
Oh yeah, that's right.
I scanned it.
Yeah. But yeah, that was the extent of you knowing where this was going.
It's so crazy, the amount of control.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, but what kills me at the same time, or at least maybe it was that way in Samhain, but when I listen to like the horror business era, I was talking about this recently, and I've talked about this with several people on the phone recently, and I just hear, like, you hear all of the stuff that Bobby is doing in his guitar playing, and I'm just going, Glenn didn't write that, though. Like that Johnny Thunders little thing at the end of like harvest. I just don't see how that was Glenn. I can only think that had to be Bobby. And when in the creative process did it funnel down into what you're talking about in Samhain?
Well, he would ask for ideas occasionally. You know, like To Walk the Night. He's like, do something that sounds like the 2-note solo that I wrote. He said, do something that sounds like Johnny Thunders or Jeff Beck. So then I went home and I listened to Beck's Bolero and a couple of other records, and then came up with 2 notes, and it worked.
I mean, I just feel like I don't know when one thing becomes another thing in terms of like you go from just being when do you become an author versus essentially what he's doing with musicians is they become extensions of him. He makes these people, extensions. He knows how to do everything and he can oversee everything, but it allows for musicians with perhaps more flair to come in and do their own thing.
Yeah, but yeah, he's using you as a tool. He's a general contractor.
He's a general contractor. He's a musical general contractor. So when Lyle washes out, when do you get the call? What happens? How does that go down?
I was there already in the periphery, like you said.
Right.
So, Glenn's hanging out with Steve, and, Glenn's got to go to the post office and the bank. And so I'm in the car because Steve's driving around because Steve has a car and Glenn doesn't.
Glenn didn't drive at all.
No, he did. He was, for a guy that writes about death and destruction, he would give you a lecture on seatbelts that you wouldn't believe.
Get out of here.
No, you can ask. You should talk to Tarek Shapley, who was the original Warlords guitar player.
Really?
Yeah, and they played shows with them. And Tarek's probably about my age exactly. And
I know Tarek. Tarek. I don't know him. We've never met in person, but we've met through correspondence. And I was supposed to interview him a long time ago. He's in that photo with Glenn. He was at the 79 Irving Plaza show with his girlfriend. Yes, I need to talk to him at some point. And, if you speak to him first, you tell him I will be in touch. Truly.
Yeah. I talk to him every once in a while. But yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
You guys went to the Misfits show together.
Yes.
Yeah. I was at that show too. We were all at that show. Pete, the Misfits nerd inside of me is like, how many different lineups of different Glenn Danzig bands were at that Madison Square Garden show? And I was like, okay, 3/4 of Samhain, 3/4 of the Static Age lineup, 3/4 of the new Misfits lineup. It just went on and on and on. I was just like, I couldn't believe all the people that were at that show.
Yeah, it was just surreal that to go from thinking watching them play Great Gildersleeves was that was a big show in 83. And to it's like the Gardens, how did this happen?
I could literally fill volumes of books talking about how did that happen. Just endlessly blows my mind.
I actually, it got to be too much for me at one point, and I fell asleep.
Get out of here.
Like an infant, and
you were so overstimulated.
I guess so. I just I have to close my eyes.
Did it how did it sound to you?
It was too much.
How did it sound to you from wherever you were?
Like an arena show. Not great.
In your expert musician opinion of everything, and what you're seeing on the stage and how it's rolling. I want to go back to Samhain, but I want to just ask you this, because I feel like you're an authority on this, or at least maybe you would have some sort of insight that I would not. AC's up there, Doyle's up there, the band from a musical standpoint. What's going on? Is AC's holding things together with his guitar, or what's going on with that? Because everybody's like, "Oh, Doyle's not playing. Doyle is playing. Doyle
is playing." I
Right.
don't know. I really, I don't understand that, because, Doyle's still making records.
Right. That's what I never understood.
I didn't understand what the problem was.
Well, I've heard why there's a second guitar player. I just don't understand how, all the trolls and nerds on the internet are like, he's not even playing. He's not even. And I'm like, Doyle he's put out 2 albums full of music. I've seen Doyle live in the flesh. The guy knows how to play a guitar. It's not like he doesn't know how to play guitar. I don't think Glenn likes his tones. I think that's the problem.
I think that's it.
It's not, that Doyle doesn't know how to play, but I was just curious to know it's just sort of interesting how they, because they're like, oh, we'll never be a 5-piece, but there they are. As a 5-piece. That's interesting.
I couldn't really differentiate it, but it was fun just watching Doyle. If he wasn't there, and I know Glenn didn't want him there, it wouldn't have been as good.
No. He's a necessary component,
right?
In the same way that Jerry is. And I saw plenty of those Danzig and Doyle shows, and it was great. It was honestly, it was excellent from a musical standpoint. I'm like, great, I don't need anything else. But there's something about having Glenn, Jerry, and Doyle together. Yeah. Jerry doing his power slides, Jerry filling in the backing vocals. It just, seeing those 2 side by side, that's the Misfits. It's the Misfits.
Yeah.
Okay, going back to Samhain, going back to the basement, we talk about making T-shirts. So Glenn is doing something so unbelievably interesting, and I would say maybe even sets him apart from many of the other punk bands at the time who are still doing DIY stuff. I mean, Glenn is really DIY in the sense that not only is he, putting together independent releases on Plan 9, but he's essentially doing apparel in his basement, DIY, like handmade completely. What's that all about? How's that work? How involved is Erie in that process at this point? I know you guys are all helping, but
yeah,
I don't know.
Well, Erie also did, he did silk screens. I guess he started in high school art class, and he did like the, I think the Simon Bar Sinister shirt and the Underdog shirt. And, we all helped. But, Glenn would come up with the screen and then do it. And he'd actually make the screens himself, I think, because he had an enlarger, a photographic enlarger that you.
Right.
And, because I had been up until I started getting really involved playing guitar, I was into photography, which when I started playing guitar, that drove my parents nuts, that I could actually have a vocation because I was a terrible student. I wanted to quit school.
Right.
And now I was going to throw it all away for guitar. And so I understood some of what he was doing, and Erie did too. But it was. If we had been able to record ourselves, I'm sure we would have.
Right. Yeah. So the photo enlarger, that's the thing. That's like the projector style thing, right?
Yeah.
You don't see that anymore in today's classrooms, but back in the day, 70s, 60s, 70s, 80s, all the way up through the 90s, that was like such a needed tool.
I'm sure mine's still in my my parents' attic.
Nice.
Yeah.
And so Glenn had, Glenn didn't work a straight job, but Glenn was making dough with this mail order business that he basically started a mail order Hot Topic in his basement.
Yeah. The Fiend Club.
The Fiend Club. Just kind of blows. I revel in this all the time. The idea that this dude he's basically just making counterculture stuff that he's really into and selling it to his fan base directly through a mailing list network.
Yeah, hang on.
Go ahead.
No, we're still in March 1983.
It just kind of blows my mind that and just doing it because it's cool, because it's just what he wants to do,
Yeah, and he I don't know whether we would have gotten that far if he wasn't living at home with his parents, because
Right.
Yeah, he was making money off this, but I don't
Right.
think you could have supported yourself.
Gotcha. So here's the next thing I want to talk about, and this is what blows me away. Two things. Thing number one about Samhain in general. Samhain is, and I've spoken about this with Steve. I'm curious to hear what you think. Samhain is like this insane thing within the hardcore scene, because it's death rock, it's post-punk, it's goth with hardcore, but it's almost like the misfit of hardcore even of itself, because it's sharing, you guys are sharing bills with all these other cookie cutter hardcore bands, some of them at least.
Yeah.
And you guys are doing this unbelievably different thing. Is there ever do you ever get annoyed, or has there ever been a time when like a journalist is writing about Samhain, they never seem to get it right, like what it was? They always call it more metal or something, and it's like none of those things. Is there ever a time where you think that it's being accurately described?
I never thought it was. People are gonna see what they want to see, which I was just happy that I was like being noticed. And that at what, 21, that's right. That's, I was like, ooh, wow, we're in this, we're in what, Flesh and Bones or something, like some fanzine. It's like, look, Dad, I'm in this. And he's like, yeah, how much money did you make?
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course. So okay, from a musician standpoint and from a musician who's playing this music, what is it like? What is Samhain doing that makes it more unique in that kind of way? Because in my mind, I could point to the drumming and go, well, the drumming seems to be less hi-hatty. It's more about like tribal drums, which everybody seems to sort of pick up on. There's, like I said, there's the gothy aspect. You have the chimes and the bell tolls and yada yada yada. But like, what about maybe like the guitar? Like, is there something that I'm missing here, or what is it that makes it different from other hardcore?
It's not blues based. And in fact, after I got canned, I had as speaking as like a regular guitar player, that oatmeal with apples? No, thank you. She doesn't understand this.
They never do. Mine either.
It was so non-blues based, like regular rock guitar, that it took me about a year to get back where I could actually play with people that weren't doing that.
Wow. So wait, this is blowing my mind. So if I'm understanding you correctly, you're saying that because it's not blues based, you had to sort of like, it's like you're rewiring your brain to play guitar in this other way.
Mm-hmm.
You come out of that and you're like, I need to rehabilitate myself of
Right.
like playing like that.
Because it was too much. I backed into a corner.
Wow.
It's such a pigeonhole.
So there's no room to grow or evolve in that style.
Well, yeah, that's it's. We get to a certain point, and then it turns into Danzig,
right?
Which is like a blues based,
right,
rock and roll band.
Because when you go so far outside of the box, the only place to go is to go back in the box.
Right. It's to, it's I guess like Rick Rubin was like, I like what he's doing, but we have to make this palatable to your average chain walleted, denim jacketed dent head.
Right.
So
when you say it's not blues based, which I think you totally, as a non-musician, you really explain. That's such a great explanation. If I could turn the dial one step further.
Mm-hmm.
So if it's not blues based, then what is it? What is like? What?
I would almost, I don't know, but it just didn't have the structure.
Gotcha.
The building of, start in A, go to D, C, G, like that kind of thing.
Like the hungry end, the guitar on the hungry end.
That is probably one of the weirder songs.
Or like November's Fire.
Yeah. Yeah. In fact, I hadn't, I hadn't played that in years. And one of the guys that worked for me, Johnny Rosado, was a big Samhain fan when he was a kid. He's also like a I'd say the third generation hardcore New York dude with the Craze, and he has some other bands. But he was like, "How'd you play that?" And I'm just like, "I don't know. I don't remember." we sat around for like half an hour and figured it out. I remember it was a weird, like a reverse D chord, but it took a while to figure it out.
That is so I want to talk about, we talked about this 9 years ago. You may not remember, but I was asking you, I don't think it was on tape, but I was just like, what is it? You work in a guitar related industry. So they're obviously going to be, Samhain is not going to be known by your average alternative music fan, but someone who knows their stuff is going to know Samhain and be like, like, whoa. And what's that like to just be like, it's like, you're this dude, but you're also like the guitar player for this like revered band from like back in the day. It's kind of crazy.
There was the first guy that figured that out, besides Brian Hyland, who I worked with, who was a Necros guy, and then he moved to New York, was Dougie Needles from Joan Jett.
Ooh.
Doug Cangelosi. He was the first one that he was like, "I know what you did. I know who you are." And at that point, I was like, "Yeah, well, whatever. Yeah, I'd rather talk about or just focus on what I was doing then."
Right.
But yeah, later on, and we get these drivers that they're Misfits fans, and you can tell it's like they're dying to ask me stuff.
Oh yeah. Does their face change? Do they just like drop? They're like,
one of them did.
You got to understand though, it's one thing when you meet someone like, what like Tom Cruise or Nicolas Cage or some like real, like larger than life sort of like presence, and you act that way. But I feel like that you have the same sort of reaction when it's someone from something that you really, really love or obsessed with or whatever. And it's like this thing, it almost seems to be like the reverse when it's a thing that maybe you don't get to share with people on a regular basis. So to be in the presence of it all the time, or to be in the presence of it and just go like, oh my God, you're the dude. Like, listen to friggin', Unholy Passion EP like 1,000 times. And then like, you're just like, they're just like, yeah, dude, I'm just Pete, just chilling,
Yeah, it's like, yeah, I
doing
did
my
that,
thing.
but we need to get this truck loaded.
Right. I just thought that's so funny, man. Like, just like to be like that. That's just such an interesting, surreal, awesome thing. So okay, so to continue on in our sort of understanding and whatnot. So Nishim comes out, you're in the band, you're playing Unholy Passion. I mean, oh, that's what I wanted to ask. So then what about a song like Macabre? Like blows my mind. When you really think about out of all the songs in Samhain, I know there's some other ones, but I think about a song like Macabre being played at like a hardcore show somewhere in Middletown, USA in the mid 80s. Like, what the F? What is
Some
that
people,
about?
some people got it, and some didn't. I remember we played St. Louis, and I think we played with like Drunks with Guns and some other band that my another coworker plays drums for now in New York. But an early version of it, and they didn't like us at all. In fact, it was like there was glass ashtrays around the club, and they were throwing them at us.
Wow.
I got you had occasionally like people would try to like pour beer in your boots, and they because it was something like that too was girls got it a little better.
Huh. Maybe it's the
and
golf.
and every fucking skinhead was like immediately hated us, which came to a fruition in Columbus, Ohio, where a bunch of guys said they were gonna like get us and like burn the van or whatever. And
Oh my God.
so we put the one of the kids from Maurice out in the van to make sure. And this one dude who was from Passaic, by the way.
Those dudes loved you guys. Those Maurice guys
Yeah.
loved you.
And they and this guy slashed all the tires on the Hertz rental van and then
Wow.
denied it when we came outside. And I think the cops took him away on some unrelated burglary charge that they couldn't finger him for, but they knew he did it.
Wow.
And I heard later he died, got killed in jail.
So let me ask you this. What about, so you make it all the way to Frisco, right?
Mm-hmm.
Make it all the way out to Frisco. I've heard someone who was at both shows, the Samhain show and the Misfits show,
Mm-hmm.
sort of tell the story. Is there any sort of, because here's the thing, and I want to get your opinion on this as well. Even by this time, everything that happens in the Misfits, or a lot of the stuff that happens in the Misfits, at least in those punk pockets, wherever they are in the United States, whether it be by fanzine or however, telephone, the mythology of the Misfits is spread, even by that point. Am I correct on that? Would it be, or has it not fully flourished?
No, it hadn't yet.
Okay. Then what about the Doyle El Kabong incident where he cracked some kid over the thing?
Yeah.
And like
that happened.
Right.
Yeah,
so is there any, sorry, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I mean, Glenn told us about that. And at the time he was probably like really upset, but it became funny later on, which I think that happened upstairs at the On Broadway, where and we were at the MAB downstairs. I remember him talking about that.
But you're on your way to play Frisco in Samhain. Is there any sort of apprehension about going there because of what had happened? previously?
There might have been, but I mean, but he was really paranoid about everything.
Huh.
And I mean, that's part of his personality, that they're out to get me.
Right, like in London Dungeon with London Dungeon.
Yeah, or
Skinheads.
but believe it or not, he came in on the Avenue B Iggy tour. He came to one of the shows we did with Steve in London.
Wow.
And came backstage and was acting like, just completely paranoid.
Over what?
There was nothing to be paranoid about. And I was like, hey, Glenn, you want to take a picture with me and Iggy? He's like, no, can't do that. And I thought, Iggy thought it was hilarious.
So Iggy Pop and Glenn Danzig were backstage at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
What does Iggy Pop know of the Misfits or Samhain or any of that stuff? Does Iggy Pop have any sort of understanding? Jim, does Jim have any kind of understanding of that stuff?
Kind of, and he always knows more than he lets on.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
So
he did before he hired me. He did, he did a bunch of figured out what I'd done.
Oh. So he's asking you about playing in Samhain and whatnot?
Yeah, like he wanted to. He wants to know. He's a deep thinker.
Wow.
And he wants to know, well, what you'd think about it a lot of times. And I remember when I auditioned, I went over to his apartment and we played I showed him a weird tuning and then on guitar, and we played for a while. And where was I going with this?
I don't know, but I really want to talk about Iggy Pop because that's my other big obsession after Danzig and Misfits, which is why you're like the coolest dude ever, and that you have feet in both of those worlds. Let's finish up with the Samhain, and then we'll get to,
yeah,
we're gonna get to that because I can't wait to talk about that. So all right, so here's another question I have. So at this time, there's also Legacy of Brutality going on in addition to Unholy Passion.
Yeah.
He's playing on that. Let me ask you this. I don't know, you must have been still in the band at this point, unless this was after the final Samhain show. Were you around when Erie and Glenn are recording new tracks for Misfits collection that would eventually be on Misfits collection too?
I was doing other stuff. It's like I had those guys didn't work, so it's like I'd hear about what they were doing.
Gotcha.
So I was doing construction, so I was working, so I'd hear about it when I got home.
So what do you think of the song Mephisto Waltz? It's like a weird sort of situation. Are you familiar with that song?
I've heard it.
It's like a Samhain song. It sounds like it was recorded by Samhain because Glenn was in Samhain when he did it. He did it with Erie.
Yeah.
But yet it's a Misfits track. It's like the weirdest thing.
Yeah.
Okay. Moving on. All right. So then you got Unholy Passion, great EP. You do that. And I mean, really, Samhain's only around for 2 years, but I mean, you guys did a lot of stuff in 2 years. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah.
Two albums, 1 LP, coast to coast touring. Tell me about the process of, well, first of all, tell me about the process of Unholy Passion. You go into the studio, and Glenn kind of has it all figured out already.
Right. But we've rehearsed the songs to death without vocals.
So you never hear the vocals until the recording of
right.
Get out of here.
Yeah, he'd stand there and glower at you.
Wow.
And I think that was after the recording. I think that that's what broke Steve, that record.
What, Unholy Passion?
Yeah.
What was it? The drum play? You mean like the drum playing, or just?
Yeah, I think the whole thing, it really challenged him.
Wow. Well, it's not easy drumming, right?
No, it's not.
Yeah. I've watched Steve. I've watched you guys. I forgot where it was. It was one of those videos. Maybe it's from the box set. I'm watching all you guys play. I'm watching everything. I'm watching Steve go at it, and it just doesn't look easy. And he's doing backing vocals
Yeah,
on a mic too. That cannot be easy.
no.
And then you guys jump on double bass while he's playing guitar for Archangel. Why? Why two basses?
I guess that song was so special to him. He told me, like, you're never going to be able to play this right. And I was like, okay, I'll play bass on that.
But
what are you going to say? No.
Too. So weird.
Yeah. Very.
That is so bizarre to me. And then I think it would be crazy not to highlight the specialness of, in my opinion, it almost is like if Samhain had a Stairway to Heaven, this would be that song. Halloween 2. The way that you guys do it, the way that it builds, it really is something else. And what was like, he comes down, he's like, we're gonna do Halloween 2, but we're gonna do it like this, or excuse me. How does that go down?
I don't remember exactly. We just started playing it. He said, yeah, let's do Halloween 2.
Huh.
And we played it real slow, and I had that Ibanez flanger, which any of those songs like that have the one or two chords, two notes, that I would use it on because it would stretch the riff out.
Huh.
It seemed. So I used that on there, and yeah, that was always fun to play.
Dude, it's like, I see that especially in '85. There's a show where Erie has platinum blonde hair and he's wearing the Venom shirt, and you guys are playing. I don't know where the hell you're playing. Steve is still in the band, and you guys are doing that song, and it's just something else. It is something else. Just the way that it builds and builds and builds, and until the final. It must have driven people nuts. What was that? Let me ask you this: what was it like? Is Glenn frustrated? Is anybody frustrated? People just go, where's the Misfit songs? I want Misfit songs. Is that why London Dungeon is there? Is that why All Hell is there? Who Killed Marilyn?
Well, he didn't want to do them at first, but then I think since he wrote everything, that he would, he's like, I want to bring this one back.
Right. And you did play Blood Feast on a few occasions.
Mm-hmm.
It's a shame. It's a crime that it was never recorded.
Well, that was actually written for Samhain.
Right, as you said.
Yeah.
Do you think that some of those Earth AD songs would translate well if they were Samhainified and vice versa? Could you turn Samhain songs into Earth AD Misfits and vice versa, or is it just impossible?
That was carefully avoided. Because he had the Jerry and Doyle stigma, he thought at that point. Whereas it's like when we did Blood Feast, he's like, yeah, these guys ruined this. And here's the way it's supposed to go.
Wow.
Yeah. Because I started playing it like Doyle did. And he's like, no. I wrote this like this. And this, and then like Green Hell, it was like, he's like, it's like a James Brown tune.
What the So Green Hell, Blood Feast.
Yeah.
What else? I'm trying, because there's about half of Earth AD is meant for Samhain.
Yeah.
Okay. So Green Hell, you just confirmed that one. What about Hellhound? Maybe.
No.
Not
no.
Hellhound.
That was like a throwaway, I think.
What about Daemonomania?
No, none of those. That's like I think he had, by that point, he might have felt trapped by the two other guys, and had to write things like that. Either that or he wrote them differently and they just sped everything up.
Wow. So moving on, you Unholy Passion comes out, and it's like the release schedule is kind of insane because again, this is a 2-year period.
Mm-hmm.
So what, you put in something out and then you're just touring heavy behind it.
Yeah.
What about the pressing story? You go to Long Island.
Yeah.
What's going on there? Why the guy wasn't around and you had
Or
to
he was more interested in I guess there was a bigger market for, he had people buying like these bootleg Beatle
Sergeant Pepper,
or it was like, I think he showed us Abbey Road.
Oh,
and Glenn's like, Charlie, you can't do that. And lo and behold, months later, the FBI came in and got him. But we had I went out there with that was the origin of the seatbelt story too. we're going to CSI or whatever the pressing plant's called. So I drove out there with Glenn in his father's like car, and it turns out we were trying to pick the records up, but he hadn't pressed any yet, so we had to do it ourselves. He showed us, or showed me how to run the presses, and then that's how
job hazard.
Yeah, that's how the records got made, and that's why some of them, one of them had, the presses had like, you take the vinyl and throw it in a bin. I guess it's different now, but and it would melt, and there was white in it already. So a couple of the first few were like almost pure white. And
Unholy Passion?
No, the Initium.
Oh, of Initium, right.
Unholy Passion was only, that didn't get colors until later on.
Gotcha.
But that was, all of these were initial runs of 5,000. Wow. And then you take them to the distributors, and they were on like a 90-day, they didn't have to pay you for 90 days.
Wow.
So we never made the money back to like press another run of 5,000. It wasn't until later on that he got involved with Caroline that they did that.
Right. That's how Caroline, but the Caroline connection, as I recently was illuminated to me, the Caroline connection started all the way back in 79 with Beware and that whole jam, which I did not know. That's how he first made contact with Caroline.
Yeah, they were just a distributor first.
Sorry?
They're like them, Green World, Gem.
Yeah, but you said they were a what kind of distributor first?
They just were a record distributor.
Oh, right.
That you give them, it was a network of,
right.
Even you just give them the record and they send it to different stores. They had a better network than you could have. This all started about like the new wave era, like 78, 77. Because I remember working at a record store when I was in high school, and the Gem catalog would get mailed to you, and they'd have all these weird records that you couldn't get.
Wow.
So that's the way we ordered the odder stuff. But they wouldn't pay you for 90 days, and sometimes they wouldn't pay you.
How frustrating.
So, and so we didn't have time to like get into that, and then by that time the band was over.
And there was a whole debacle. He'd already gotten burned by Slash.
Yeah.
Over Walk Among Us.
Yeah.
So Earth AD initially came out on Plan 9 after the Misfits broke up. He just put it out completely by himself.
Yeah, but you'd still have to involve a pressing plant.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I remember when that came out. It was a Thursday night. My sister was we had the Pat Duncan show on WFMU, and in the living room, my sister was cutting Jim Wallerstein's hair in the living room. And Pat's, have you ever listened to Pat Duncan?
I have not.
He was like super dry and unemotional for this music that drove kids insane. And he's like, Jerry Only's just walked into the studio and threw a copy of the new Earth AD at me, so we're gonna play it. And you're Jerry in the background like, oh yeah.
But here's what I don't understand. So if the band breaks up, Glenn and Jerry are not talking anymore.
That took a while, I think.
What, them not talking anymore?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. I because everybody was still yeah. I think that actually took longer than it seemed.
All right, you're blowing my mind right now, because the legend, the lore is always that when he got out, he got his stuff, they never spoke again until lawsuits.
Maybe maybe they didn't, and
it's crazy.
I just remember like those guys had copies of Earth AD.
Gotcha. Did you ever notice, you know what I never noticed until very recently, if you look on the Wolf's Blood side, that there are skull, testicles, and a snake cock right there on the, I was like, we were going through the book, the new Scream With Me book, and I was like, well, there they are. There's those skull balls and that snake cock. Because Glenn Danzig sees, yes, skull dick and snake balls. Perfect for my record.
Sure, yeah. That was, now who drew that? Was that Mad Mark Rude?
That was not. That was not. That was somebody, that was a different artist. I forget the name in the book. We went over that in the Scream With Me episode for my other podcast show, Streaming Evil Live. But here's what I always wondered. So did Earth AD take so long to come out because they waited a whole year for Mad Mark Rude to finish that cover?
That's the legend.
Because it took him a year.
Yeah.
Pen and ink.
Yeah.
Wow. Too bad. That's a guy I wish I could talk to pick his brain. Mad Mark Rude, he's passed.
He didn't have a refrigerator.
Okay. He sounds like he wouldn't have a phone or a microphone to talk on either.
No, it was pretty grim staying out at his house.
Wow. He had a Mad Max leather jacket, right?
Yeah.
He used to wear his jacket. He had the full thing, the shoulder.
I don't know. He might have at one point, but I mean, me and my friends were all into it. We were way into that.
Me too, man. That's my stuff.
And
Glenn liked that movie.
Yeah.
He wrote a good review of it.
Yeah.
So hold on to push us forward here.
Mm-hmm.
So you do that. You mix in the records. I've heard this story several different. I don't know if there might have been more than one incident where Glenn had to pour the pellets in. It might not. I've heard this story other ways from other people in different situations, and I've come to surmise that it just must have happened several times. And the guy, what did you say his name was?
Charlie.
Charlie must have felt comfortable just letting Glenn and whoever he had with him just pour pellets into his machine.
Yeah.
Just blows my mind.
Just showed us what to do, and
yeah,
that was it. And then he disappeared to go do his nefarious bootlegging again.
And Glenn's telling you, or he's just saying in general, he's like, hey, don't clean that or something. I want to swirl things up.
No, we didn't know.
Oh, you just did. It was just an accident.
Yeah.
That's even cooler.
The last white one I traded to Johnny Rosado. Plus I was supposed to give him some other stuff for this. He had a fairly rare Ibanez guitar. It's called the Futura.
Okay.
And it's basically a copy of a Gibson Moderne that they never made. And it was his uncle's, and he hated it. And he was like, yeah, I got one of those. I was like, really? I'd like to see that. So he at that point, the white record might have been a couple $100. So I was supposed to trade him that and some other shit for the guitar. But at this point, the white record's worth about 3 times what the guitar is. So I was like, you got the better end of the deal here. He's like, yeah, I still hate that guitar. So dude. I'm like, great, I got what I wanted. He got what he wanted.
That stuff is gold.
I know. Right, it's like that white. They're like $10,000 or something.
The market exploded. I don't know what happened. It happened with a bunch of records, and it's just, we've been watching that stuff on eBay just explode, and it's I don't know if it's messing up the collector's market, but oh my Lord, the money that's being made or paid for these things, these trinkets.
Yeah,
it's like every scrap, every butt hair, every booger is like just it's history. It's solid gold. So to move it forward, you have November Coming Fire, which is like, what an album. By the way, did you guys ever joke about the sour cream thing? You know the sour cream thing? November Coming Fire, sour cream, sour. That's what everybody on the internet is like. Not everybody, but like a bunch of people.
No, but I tried with Chicken John from Lech Patrol. We tried to do a version of Halloween as sour cream at one point.
Oh, that's nice. That's fun.
Yeah,
that's fun.
But
what was recording that record like?
Huh?
What was recording November Coming Fire like?
Pretty straightforward because we had the process down at that point.
Right.
I brought in my 50-watt Marshall, and that got Bob Aleka, who's used to doing dance records. So I think that gave that the unique sound it had.
Wow.
I've always wanted to go back and like re-record things, but then it would just end up like a Slayer record.
Right.
So we'll just leave that as is. But yeah, it was pretty straightforward.
And Glenn plays about half the drums on that thing.
I had forgotten about that. Somebody else was saying that, and I was like, no, it's only Human Pony Girl, but Eerie said it was like 6 songs.
Yeah.
I had forgotten about that completely, whether I didn't want to remember it or whether I just didn't, or I wasn't there.
Because London was fresh in the band. He didn't know the material. Glenn just sat it, and Glenn's playing on the Who Killed Marilyn single. It's not very good.
No,
it's
not. Couldn't tell him that.
No, but you want to know something? Is playing on November Coming Fire is insane. It's good. It's really good, which kind of blows my mind
because it's out of the box.
Right. Well, no one, it explains a lot. It's fascinating to me. And so when does Metallica come into the picture here? Because you knew those guys back in the day.
Yeah, the first time we met them was they came to that Mabuhay Garden show.
Wow.
And
that was all through Cliff.
Yeah, but it was I didn't see him there, but I broke a string and Kirk Hammett restrung it for me.
Nice.
I was like, I know these guys from somewhere. It's having looked at their like metal fanzines, seen them because they had, but they didn't things I did on guitar, they some things it didn't occur to them.
Huh.
Like in the G chord and in Halloween in the chorus where I do this Billy Gibbons thing where you play the like 5 open strings, mute the A, and then I pull the G flat up into G on the bottom string. And both, I remember like Kirk and James were like, when I did that.
Really?
Yeah. And I was like, you know, the one guy's like, wheedly, 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 wheedly. I couldn't do that.
And they had a special pipeline to Glenn and Erie or whoever. It was like, just give us shirts, like, or we want shirts. And they would just send care packages of shirts to Metallica.
Maybe. Yeah.
And that is like the genesis, the main genesis of everything going mainstream.
Pretty much. Yeah.
It's crazy. That's crazy to me. So November, Coming Fire comes out. You guys do some more touring. New music seminar happens. And Ruben sees Samhain and is like, I want Glenn. He didn't want the rest of you guys initially.
No. I mean, 5 minutes after we were done, he starts on the divide and conquer shit.
Yeah. He's whispering in everybody's ear.
Well,
or Glenn's ear.
But he's, you know, he told me, he's like, you always play that crappy?
How, he said that to you?
Yeah. And I said, wait a minute. I was like, you were in Hose. I was going to beat you up and take your Les Paul Jr. because you were a rich kid.
Oy.
So I was like, what do you can't play guitar. I've seen you play guitar. And, you know, it got into an argument, which is exactly what he wanted.
Right. And so how soon after that are you asked to leave or removed or fired, or however you want to put it, from the band?
Weeks.
Wow.
A week, maybe.
But you guys are, here's the other thing I don't understand. At this point, are you involved? Is there something happening with the fourth Samhain record, Samhain Grim? Is that going down at all? Or had that just been?
No, there was a couple of, you know, he was writing new material, but that's it.
Gotcha. So, but no plans to record anything yet?
No.
Gotcha. So you leave, you exit the band. Do you hear anything after your exit, or is it just become an iron curtain from which you just completely excise yourself at that point?
No, I was basically when we got London, he stayed at my family's house for a while until he got his own apartment. And so I was still talking to him.
So he was right. So he was and that's when those recordings must have happened. The Twisted Cane, Possession, Lords of the Left Hand.
And then he was the next one that
right. Right. And so they were, so it was slowly happening. And the only person that stayed on at Glenn's behest was Erie, because from my understanding, Ruben didn't want Erie at first.
No.
Yeah. Wow. And then you got involved with, wow. So that's crazy. So you're out of the band, but London is staying at your house. He's still in the band.
Well, no, he had his own place by then, but I was still.
But you guys still talked.
Yeah.
Gotcha. And then how did you get involved with Brain Eaters? I mean, Joe's a Samhain fan, so what, he was just like, Pete, come play for my band or something?
I don't even remember how they somehow got my phone number. He got my phone number up in Vernon in Highland Lakes.
Gotcha.
And I was like, all right, you know, why not?
Because he loved that. The dude was super into like goth and post punk and all sorts of stuff. You were a perfect fit for what he was doing.
What he wanted.
Yeah. That record apparently is coming out. I hope it's coming out. Finally, Dawn of the Dead, something like that. And then, okay, so how does Iggy Pop? How do you get involved with Iggy Pop? Now, mind you, I know you're a huge, I mean, you're a huge punk rock fan in general, but you are also you're a Stooges man. You like Iggy Pop. I mean, you like all this stuff. You follow this guy. How do you get that gig? How does it happen?
Well, there was all sorts of other things I did in between that.
You played with Brain Damage too, right?
What?
Brian Keats, you played with him too.
Oh yeah, I was in Genocide for 5 minutes. That was I was into anything that had a logo.
Gotcha.
Basically like Sub Kiss, like they had a, if you had a backdrop and armbands and your logo on all the guitar cabinets and shirts, I was just like, what? Singer's crazy? Just got out of jail? I'm in. And, yeah, so that was, I loved Genocide. I thought they were the greatest thing. The later version.
And he never talked to you about what had happened to him, Brian?
No, he was already, he was in Hellbent.
Right.
Another band that I really loved, that I thought should have been huge. But
for those who don't know what I'm talking
about, he went to like Princess Pang.
Right.
And
he's in a lot. He played for a lot of bands.
Yeah, and he gradually went into like New York glam metal direction. And I'd see him occasionally, and he never mentioned the Misfits. I think he was just embarrassed.
Yeah, for those who don't know, he was the final drummer on that final Fateful Night.
Actually, Todd Swallow was.
Right, Todd's. Yes, sorry.
Doyle picked up Brian by the neck and then installed Todd.
We don't want to overwrite the famous, whatever you want to call him, just the heavy hitting Todd Swallow from the Necros, but the official drummer, because he had a cool haircut, was Brian Keats, aka Brain Damage, who was an incredible drummer and played in a lot of bands. He's not with us anymore. But him and Pete were in Genocide together, and he never mentioned it.
His birthday was actually the day before mine, February 5th.
Wow. So you play in Genocide, but what leads you? You've done a bunch of stuff, right? Of course, not to undermine any of that, but how does this life-changing, mind-boggling, surreal, it must have been surreal for you to just suddenly be in the presence of a living legend, like a god that is James Osterberg, Iggy Pop.
Well, I was the guitar tech.
Oh.
They rehearsed, once again, they rehearsed at SIR, and he had at one point the Ramones drum tech, Mitch Keller, doing lights for him. So they need a guitar tech, and Mitch doesn't want to use Rick Weinman, who's the Ramones guy, and quite a jerk, as I remember. So he uses me, and for this is like Rock for Choice show in LA, and it's that right about then. So I had met him a couple of times in the studio, and I got to know his manager, Art Collins. That was a really great guy. Died way too young. So Mitch tells Art, like, yeah, we should take Pete with us. So on guitar at that point, he had, what's his name? It was Hal Cragen, Larry, and why can't I remember his name? I'll come. Anyway, so we do the show, and they had brought Whitey back in, or Jim had brought these guys turned out to be like
the Cursed Brothers.
Well, not yet, but it was Hal and Eric Schermerhorn. And after they did that huge American Caesar tour, I had worked for them before that.
Okay, so around 93.
You're right, 93. So he comes back and starts rehearsing in 96. And then Mitch gets me to do guitars for that show. Schermerhorn, I'm not even sure he even plays guitar anymore, but I heard he does a lot of voiceover stuff in LA.
Interesting.
He had a good radio voice, but he's like a really uptight guitar player, and those guys, I think at some point got to be too musician-like for Jim. They didn't have enough
Oomph. Punk energy
for him. Yeah, and so he gets to that end. He gets Whitey Kirst back on second guitar, and Eric and Hal hate him, and because they think he's a terrible guitar player, blah blah blah, whatever. So we're on our way back to New York on the flight from LA, and I guess Eric got up and told Iggy, he's like, either I'm the guitar player or you know, fire Whitey or I'm quitting. And you know, just pulled that out in the middle of a flight. And you don't do that with Iggy. As with Glenn, you don't give him an ultimatum. They're similar in some ways.
Yeah.
So Jim was like, fine, quit. So Eric quits, and Jim's like, you know, to Art, his manager, like, well, what do we do now? And Art's like, Pete plays guitar. And Jim's like, oh yeah. So
dude,
he calls me at work at SIR, and
just like, hey, it's Jim.
Well, it's the receptionist that picks it up. He's like, hey, it's Iggy. I need to talk to Pete. And you hear him over the PA like, Pete, Iggy's on the phone. And everybody stops and looks at me. And so I pick it up, and he's like, yeah, think you can help me out? You want to play guitar? I'm like,
no, sorry, I have a chess match. No.
So I go over to his house on my birthday, and
best birthday present ever.
We play for a while. He goes, yeah, you can do this.
And do you know most of the Stooges stuff at that point?
Yeah.
And the Lust for Life and yada yada yada.
Yeah.
Anything? Wow.
I'd always played a lot of those tunes in bands before.
Right.
Anything. In high school, you know, and it's like I described it as like, you know, I'm playing tunes with the guy who wrote them that I played in bands in high school.
And you played both guitar and bass at different times in that band. It started with guitar and then went to bass.
Yeah, I was the second guitar player, and then we got. I guess he was looking to change things up, so he got Moose Man from Body Count.
Okay.
Play bass, and we did one or two shows like that. But I mean, he's a great guy and great bass player, but it just wasn't exactly right.
Right, wasn't a good fit.
So after we went to Poland, played Warsaw, came back a couple of weeks later, I get a call from Art that Moose Man got murdered in his driveway in a drive-by.
Wow.
Because he's from South Central.
Yeah, that'll do it.
And so a couple more weeks goes by, and then I get a call from Iggy, once again at work, which they're used to by now. That he's like, think you can play bass? I'm like, yeah, I can play bass. It's like, so.
Here, listen to Archangel.
Yeah, yeah. Actually, we did. We did. I showed him that later on after it came out.
Wait. Hold on. Wait. Pause. You're telling me that Iggy Pop listened to a Samhain song?
Yeah.
And what was it? Was he just like, interesting? Like what? What?
Well, to him, I had more of a. I was more certified. I would say he thought of me as more certified as, you know, I wasn't an LA hair metal reject.
Right. You had a punk pedigree.
Right. And like him, I had started something that everyone else latched onto eventually.
Right.
So it wasn't, like Whitey would be like, and apparently he imitates Whitey the same way I do. It was like, yeah, man. You. Whitey would try to get free stuff in record stores by pointing me out and saying I was in Samhain, so I'd be signing stuff and he'd be getting the free stuff.
Get out of here.
Oh. But so anyway, it's I like playing bass because I liked it when Ron Ashton was the bass player in the Stooges. You want some complicated riffs? Listen to that guy.
As a bass player.
I've
never really thought. I always thought that was a hit on Ron's, like, not ego, but like the fact that he got relegated to the bass from guitar, that James came in and became the guitar player, and that always was like a dark bruise on Ron's soul a little bit.
Yeah, maybe, but I mean, he was a great bass player.
Wow.
And so I basically like on the Raw Power era stuff did everything he did. And I remember being woken up by Iggy on a plane once and thanked for playing Ron's parts right when nobody else did.
Wow.
So,
well, I guess that's the, I always hear that, guitar and bass are kind of interswitchable if you're a guitar player or whatever, but that you have bass players that are bass players and you have guitar players that are guitar players. But then you have this thing where you have a guitar player playing a bass, and that I guess is a different mentality.
That's my favorite kind of rock bass player. Somebody like Tom Peterson.
Or I guess even we were talking about him earlier. Would Jeff Magnum fall into that sort of? Yeah. Interesting. Or what's his face? Lemmy plays.
Yeah.
Doesn't Lemmy play bass and guitar?
Lemmy and Ron Ashton. That's what I like. JJ Burnell.
Yeah.
Tom Peterson.
What is it? Is it the strumming that's different that like makes it different, or is it just the
incorporating chords and playing it like a rhythm guitar?
Right.
Whereas you're not, being like the bass player, like somebody. Yeah, just or you could. Some bands it works. If you have two guitars, you want to have somebody. Yeah.
Is Dave Alexander, like, does he play more like a guitar player, or is he like, where does he fall into that paradigm?
He was, as Iggy always said, he was just the guy that was around.
Gotcha.
The bass, because later on when we did Skull Ring, and they were going to do the Stooges songs, once again I got a call at work. Hey, we're going to do some Stooges tunes, and I want you to play bass on them. I was like,
you were supposed to be the guy. You were supposed to be the guy. You told me this.
Yeah. And Ron did it himself, and you can tell that's fine. But when they ended up with Mike Watt, that was the Ashton's choice because he had crawled up their asses.
Right, because he had done the thing with Jay Mascis, whatever.
Jay Mascis, yeah.
Yeah.
And he wasn't the right guy. And Jim was disappointed that I didn't do it. But he had to acquiesce somewhere, I guess.
Right.
But
so you played on, let me think about this. American Caesar. So you played on Naughty Little Doggy.
No.
Right?
I was in the band at that point. I played on Avenue B, Beat 'em Up, and
Skull Ring.
Skull Ring, yeah.
Wait, I thought you played on, so you were not you were in the band, but you didn't record Naughty Little Doggy.
No.
Gotcha. Okay. Right. And we've talked about how, there's this great clip. Go online. You'll see Pete playing with Iggy. I think it's the David Letterman show. Mm-hmm. Iggy has his silver his padded silver gloves on. He's wearing a broccoli necklace just cuz, and they're doing a song called Mask, which is probably my favorite off of Beat 'em Up. Let me ask you this question. Did you ever ask Iggy about the peanut butter at in 1970 in Cincinnati? Is it true that Stiv Bators handed the peanut butter to Iggy?
He wouldn't know. But if you look closely at the pictures, there's somebody that looks like Stiv right below him.
I've always thought it was Stiv. Yes, I've seen those pictures, and I always thought
it was. The nose is the same.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's essentially considered, it's probably not in the history of things, but I guess in documented record, that's considered to be the first stage, like crowd surfing, stage walk, whatever.
Yeah.
In the history of music or rock, modern rock. Crazy. And here you are playing with the guy. Let me ask you this question. 1996, somewhere, I think it's in Greece, Iggy climbs the scaffolding on what, just doing his Iggy Pop thing as he would do it all. You guys played all those crazy festivals in the 90s, just going everywhere. Probably was amazing just to jet set around the world. Here you are, just jet setting around the world, hanging out backstage, rubbing shoulders with who's who at whatever festival. In 1996, Greece, Iggy climbs the scaffolding, gets hit in the head with a beer bottle, starts bleeding profusely from his head, and then screams into the microphone, "You can't kill me. I'm Iggy fucking Pop."
Yep.
That's true. That's what that happened.
And it was a water bottle.
Oh, it was a water bottle. It was not beer.
Full.
Okay. Did it make him bleed?
Yeah.
Wow. And so he actually turns to the audience like some mad, crazy Roman emperor screaming from his lungs.
Yeah.
With the microphone in his hand. "You can't kill me. I'm Iggy fucking Pop."
Yeah.
Greatest story ever in the history. More so to me, especially because he had been through so much by that point, that more so than, taking a drumstick to the chest at Max's Kansas City or any of that stuff. That to me is my favorite. Let me ask you this question. First of all, what do you think? So what do you think about all those albums that he would put out in the 80s and stuff? He always seemed to be trying to change his image. He did the metal album with Steve Jones from Sex Pistols.
That was that was a I like that one. I still play it occasionally. There's some others like Zombie Birdhouse, and
that's too bizarre for me. I can't get into it.
Like people like that, and
Pain and Suffering is a good song. I like that song.
Yeah.
Chris Stein. That was he always gets a guy. He always finds like a guy to help him with the songwriting. It was Steve Jones, Chris Stein, Ivan Krall.
Yeah.
I like that Party album, Party and Soldier. I think those are pretty great. I enjoy those.
Party not so much. Soldier was we had that was in heavy rotation on cassette in the cars in the early 80s.
Yeah. So what happens? So tell me about, let's talk about Skull Ring for a minute.
Mm-hmm.
So you're at the peak culmination of everything. Those guys start talking again. And you're also kind of collaborating with all of these artists, right? In some way, shape, or form, or are those collaborations happening separately?
It's separate
from the Trolls band.
Right. Yeah.
Gotcha.
We did like 2 weeks in the studio, and then he just did the other stuff on his own.
So you said he's really deep.
Yeah.
And the later modern Jim Osterberg seems like, he seems very sophisticated. He doesn't seem like the down and dirty, roll in the mud Iggy from the 70s and late 60s and 80s or whatever. What
don't forget, he was like he was valedictorian of his high school class.
So was he like that the whole time, like a well-read?
Yeah.
So what do you think happens to a guy like that when he gets on the stage? Does something switch off?
It's he said it himself. It's two personalities
inside of his body.
Mm-hmm.
and the switch goes off and he goes mad. He just goes
Mhm.
mad.
Yeah.
It's crazy. So
And
crazy.
yeah, and eventually it drove him crazy.
Right. It did. It did. And he bounced back and he found the balance.
Yeah. But it took a long, long time.
Right. And let me ask you this. Every once in a while I see Iggy with a guitar, which is such a bizarre notion for me as a fan. When was that common, or was it common in the studio when you were in the studio with him? Is he a guitar player, or is it more of like a prop, or like what's the deal with that?
No, it would be a tool.
Yeah.
So, but he, uh, what was the book? Pure Chaos, or
Oh yeah. There's two books. There's Something in Blood, Open Up and Bleed.
Oh
There's
yeah,
two Iggy books.
I got
I've read
anything
both
for
of
that
them.
one.
I forget the name of the other one. The one with the Tommy guns on the cover.
No. This is it's him upside down, missing a tooth, and it was put out by Third Man.
Oh, okay.
So it's like Pure Chaos, or
Okay, I must have not.
But anyway, they the guy that wrote it, Jeff, I forget his name, but he had acquired Danny Field's archive, which was just basically a room filled with boxes of crap. And so he and the co-author, they put together like this bunch of artifacts, and then they got together with Iggy and showed it to him, and he commented on all of it. And I just remember he said that he wrote I'm sick of you by himself. So like, because they get into the songwriting, and he's like, no, Williamson would never have done that.
Wow.
So, but that there's a part of the fast part of that is it's actually a Yardbirds tune. 10 years time ago, or which I always knew, but I still thought it was pretty great. And
what do you think?
Ron's playing on that one too is really good.
Let me ask you this: What do you think of the reunion Stooges albums?
Not very good.
I have to tell you, as a fan, I'm baffled by the weirdness, but I'm even more baffled by Ready to Die. Like,
Yeah.
I just can't get over that was the output, that's what they came out with. It just kind of blows my mind. There's one good song between those two albums, in my opinion. My Idea of Fun. I don't know if you're familiar with that track.
Yeah.
I think really feels, and the songs on Skull Ring feel like Stooges songs to me.
Yeah, that it's those are, but I always thought about this a lot, whereas all those first three records sort of made the world turn differently the way they were made. And a lot of the words are, your id, they're timeless. They don't mention anything. Nothing is like the telephone rang or something like that. And it doesn't mention anything like that. It's all in your mind and first person
like
feelings.
dirt.
Yeah. And that, to me, that's why they're great and they hold up. But those two records are just like, there's like She Took My Money and
ATM. There's a song called ATM.
Yeah, that's like
Tried.
Yeah, I remember playing with BB Buell, and she was like, "I have this idea for a song called I Googled You." I'm like, no.
That's where I saw you. I saw you at the Continental playing with BB Buell. And I've never really been into the musical output of BB Buell. I got nothing against her. like also a legend in her own right for numerous reasons. But I saw you get up on stage, and this was my moment of like, you know, you're part of her band, but you're also like, I don't know what you would be considered in that band. You're one of the you're the guitar player or the bass player. I don't remember which. But my eyes were latched on you the entire night because I was like, whoa, that's friggin' Pete from Samhain. Holy crap. Holy crap. And I came up to you right afterwards. I said, Pete, I want to interview you. What's your email? And you gave me your email. And it was like, this must have been 2010 or 20, maybe it was 2011.
Yeah.
I don't know. But that was my POV of like seeing you up there, going back to what we were talking about before, of like being like, holy crap, that's Pete, Damien Marshall. Like, you know, of you know, both Samhain and Iggy Pop's band, because I was familiar with that. I loved Skull Ring when it came out. I loved those songs.
Yeah.
Really great album. Phenomenal. If for you, for anything, like the idea, you're right. You didn't get to participate in the Stooges reunion, but you are on a record with the Stooges.
Yeah.
That is really cool. That's pretty amazing when you think about that. You know, I mean, for the type of career that you had, what a joyride to the culmination.
Well, yeah, Iggy also liked me because I didn't whine about money. This was, you know, everybody, you know, the other guys like Shermer Horn and Hal Cragen were like, well, we need to be on half salary but he never did that, which I can understand. And it's like, tour would end, I'd go back to work.
Right.
And they hated that at first. But eventually it turned into like I was kind of like a celebrity that people and other touring bands knew when they came through. And, you know, originally the owner was, you know, he was kind of jealous and didn't want me to work there, and then realized that I actually like knew people. I was in manufacturers knew who I was. So it was, I don't think I could, I would have done it any other way at this point.
Yeah.
Because I'm along with, you know, playing was just something else I did.
Right.
And I've always liked guys like that, like the original employees in the Fender plant in the 50s who would play gigs at night and then work there in the day and develop gear. And or people like Danny Gatton, who was also a car mechanic. And
kept you stable too.
Yeah, and machinist. And that, you know, that's what turns me on, not like, you know, Jimmy Page, or, you know, off in his castle or whatever.
Yeah.
No, I like people I can talk to and ask, you know, and then what happened? You know, it's like I remember the producer produced Cheap Trick's first record. God damn it! Now I'm blanking on his name too.
I don't know.
But anyway, he came backstage when we played
his first record. I'll tell you right now. Hold on.
Yeah.
Keep talking. I'm gonna check.
He came. Jack Douglas.
Okay.
Jack Douglas came backstage and to talk to us, and or just, you know, backstage, and I, you know, he wanted to talk to Jim, and I was like, no, what, that bass sound on the first Cheap Trick record, how did you do that? He was like, I want to know. It was, you know, he's like, Thunderbird 2 through 2 stacks of Sound Cities, you know, super whatever they were, horrible
pickle.
Yeah. And it's a great sound. So that, you know, that's what I like. That's what I like.
How many years were you with Iggy total?
8 years.
8 years. Wow. That's great, man. Dude, this has been such a pleasure for me, truly an honor to talk with you again. And freaking you have some freaking insight into these, as you say, you know, you gravitate towards these maniacal geniuses that put out legendary stuff. And it's something else, man. And
There's no sense doing anything else.
Right. Definitely agree to that. And I hope our paths definitely cross in the future at some point. Perhaps I'll if there are any clubs surviving in New York City after this disaster is over with, that I might find you on stage with Cheetah or somebody, who knows,
Yeah.
out there somewhere. So thanks.